What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with the video. Ricky Pearsall balled out for us in week 1, but Ken Walker crushed our dreams, so back to the drawing board for week 2. We've got some great spots to attack this week, though, so let's hop into it. First spot we're attacking is the New England passing attack. Yes, they looked brutal in week 1, but you know who else looked brutal was the Dolphins defense. They might have the worst secondary in the league. I mean, you cannot let Daniel Jones go 22 of 29 passing, 272 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Daniel Jones has played 61 career games where he has thrown at least 25 or more pass attempts. That was the 5th highest completion percentage in those games. Again, 5th best among 61 career games over 25 pass attempts. And if you look at his passing yardage, he had, going into last week, never thrown for over 260 passing yards on less than 35 pass attempts. But last week, he did so on 29 pass attempts. Really bad. It was a pathetic showing for that Dolphins defense. And if we look at the Patriots, sure, they looked like a mess at times, but they were 5th in situation neutral pace. They were 4th in pass rate over expectation. And the Dolphins were the same way last week. They threw at a high rate. They played fast. So I think this game is a decent one to stack up. To be honest, though, I don't have a super strong take on exactly what direction you should go in. I do think that there's a good ceiling here for plays. I think that both sides want to run the ball at times, but I think both will look at this and say that the best way to do so, the best way to move the ball is through the air. So right now, I like Drake May, higher than 218.5 passing yards. Travion Henderson, higher than 18.5 receiving yards. Stephon Diggs, higher than 41.5 receiving yards. And then Jalen Waddle, higher than 48.5 receiving yards. Unfortunately, the payout is kind of trash. So, when we have 4 picks on Underdog, we always want to use insurance. But because the correlation is so high, I really wouldn't put those 4 together and use insurance. So what I would say is use May, use Waddle, and then pick your favorite between Diggs and Henderson, and then just do 3 without insurance. That's going to be, mathematically, that's just the best way, the best payout for that. But yeah, if you have a different take here, I'd honestly be fine going any different direction. Like if you like Booty, right? Booty was the X receiver for the Patriots last week. He's probably going to play the most snaps. He's going to play more snaps than Stephon Diggs. Diggs will be more efficient on a per route basis. And I do think Diggs will see his role grow every week as he gets healthier and healthier. So I still like Diggs, but if you like Booty, I think his projection was like 39.5. So if you like that, you could go there. Maybe you like Tyreek Hill instead of Jalen Waddle. I prefer Jalen Waddle because the projection is lower and I just trust him a little bit more. Maybe you like Achane. Again, there's a number of different directions you can go in this spot, whatever way you like. Again, I think that the best way to attack this game is passing. New England was able to stop the Raiders on the ground, and the Raiders ran the ball a lot, but they had no answers. Every single time the Raiders dropped back, someone was wide open. And it's kind of similar for the Dolphins. The Dolphins' strength is supposed to be their defensive line, but my goodness, I mean, every single time Daniel Jones dropped back, everyone was wide open. And so again, both teams want to be able to run the football, but both teams have such bad offensive lines, and the strength of the other side is in stopping the run to where they're like, okay, maybe we'll try to run the ball, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And then when both teams lean pass heavy, that leads to more plays in the game. Both teams are playing faster. I don't know. I think it's a really good spot to attack. Again, it's not super clear which individual player, but if you have a take, go with that. I've told you the ones that I would do. Next, it's time for the big boy. In week 1, we faded George Pickens, right? Because of the matchup, really difficult. Didn't think he would have an amazing day. We also saw Malik Neighbors have the 3rd best usage among wide receivers, but fall just short of a big game because the quarterback play was pretty bad, offensive line was bad, a few short misses because of that, or a few close misses, I guess, because of that. This week, I think Pickens, I think Neighbors both hit deep in that Giants at Cowboys game, and so I want to be all in on both of them. If we take George Pickens higher than 99.5 receiving yards, and then Malik Neighbors higher than 109.5 receiving yards. That is 15.6x with no boost applied. I think it's pretty likely you'll find boost in your lobby this weekend. Not a guarantee. They do a lot of stuff for week one, maybe not necessarily other weeks, but I think you'll probably find a boost at some point this week if you look. But yeah, I really like this one. Brian Schottenheimer loves George Pickens. He said he wants to get him more targets this week. And to be honest, we don't need more targets from Pickens here. Obviously, you'll take it, right, if he gets more looks. But really, all we need is a slightly weaker secondary and for defenders to not commit pass interference when he beats them deep. Also, Dak looked fantastic in week one. I know it did not show up in the box score, but Lamb dropped some really easy passes. And again, there were deep PIs on Pickens to where if those are just completed, obviously the numbers look better. They still got the yards, but it didn't show up in the box score for Pickens or for Dak Prescott. But Dak was extremely accurate deep downfield. And that was, again, at Philly at night under, less than perfect conditions. I probably don't need to remind everyone that Dallas always plays better at home. So they're at home against a weaker team. It's a spot where we always like Dallas. And I want to go back to a player that we were very, very high on this summer. George Pickens is that very high variance player. He's someone that you kind of want to boost his projection whenever you're looking at him. These companies are going to set projections to be right around 50% of the time. But when Pickens hits, he does hit on the higher end. He'll have a few games in a row where it's like 25, 33, 41 receiving yards. And then all of a sudden he drops a nuke of 110, 120 receiving yards. And again, that's his career in Pittsburgh, outdoors with much worse quarterback play. I really do not give up on George Pickens after one down game in a week where we expected him to have a down game. We're going to expect most wide receivers going up against the Eagles this season to not play that well. So this is a fantastic get right spot for him. As for Neighbors on the other side, like I said, third best usage among wide receivers last week, but was super inefficient. And so he only ended up with 71 receiving yards. Russ did look terrible. Giants offensive line did look terrible. I do think we'll see Jackson Dart maybe in week 5, 6, that sort of range. So it's a concern that maybe they just can't do anything. But Dallas is going to put up points this week. That's just going to happen. And there's no way that the Giants are going to be able to lean on their ground game. They need their offensive lineman back that's injured. They need really to get up against a really bad team. I just don't think that's going to happen against Dallas this week. I don't think Dallas is some amazing team, but the only weeks that the Giants are going to be able to actually establish the run, lean on that in the second half are against much worse teams than Dallas. In this matchup last year, Neighbors had 13 and 15 targets. I don't want to project him for 15 targets, but I'd be pretty surprised if he had less than 10 targets. This is an absolute explosion spot. He's a monster. He's going to see 200 targets this season. He's going to be a league winner. And it's nice with this one because we don't necessarily care which side goes off. Last week, you sort of needed Ken Walker to be first because neither one of them was first. Pearsall kind of hit later on, but Pearsall hitting didn't necessarily make Ken Walker any more likely. If anything, it made him less likely to hit. You needed Ken Walker to hit early on and force the Pearsall side to go off. In this one, I don't care if Neighbors hits for an 80-yard touchdown, if Pickens hits for us. I couldn't care less which side gets going first. So the correlation is much stronger this week. Of course, our payout is going to be lower because these players are better. But 15.6x, I can promise you this hits at a much better rate than 1 in 15, 1 in 16. I think you've got a 10 to 12% chance of this one hitting. So those are the first two spots I like. Let's rapid fire through some solo picks I also like, although we're going to be talking about some game environments in the solo picks anyways. But some solo picks I like are Travis Hunter, higher than 48.5 receiving yards. They were feeding him designed looks on screen passes in week 1. And he was setting up for a really nice game, but they didn't really need to be aggressive in the second half. I've talked about this a few times this week. The Panthers were incapable of moving the ball. They scored 3 points by halftime. I think they had 3 points until there was 5 minutes left in the game. They should have ended up with 3 points, but they got kind of bailed out with the holding call at one point. That's not going to be the case at the Bengals. I'm pretty sure that the Bengals are going to score more than 3 points this week. And this game just has so much upside. I mean, it's not a guarantee because the Bengals are a team that likes to start off slower. They played terribly in week 1. That could translate this week, but it's undeniable that like Jaguars at Bengals has a crazy high upside. My favorite is Travis Hunter. He was inches away. That interception was so close. If the Panthers defender does not intercept that pass, it might be like, what was it, like a 70 or an 80-yard touchdown on that play. Add that to a stat line, and you're not getting 48.5 receiving yards as a projection here by Underdog. I just really like that he's getting those design looks, so he doesn't have to create everything on his own. He's a highly athletic player. He had, 6 receptions for 33 yards. And you're like, oh, that's low efficiency. He just didn't break any. Like, he's going to break some plays for long ones. He's going to hit deeper downfield. Like, if you're getting design looks and also getting other opportunities, it gives you a nice little floor, but then also still has that ceiling because you get those guaranteed touches. You could break some of those, or you could just break some plays, get wide open deep downfield at other times, like he did last week. Again, it was just short, just underthrown by Trevor Lawrence. So I think you could stack up this game a million different ways. If you really like, a bounce back from Chase, you like Chase Brown. Like, there's so many great players in this spot that, like, if you think it goes off, just take everything. My favorite is Travis Hunter. I think 48.5 receiving yards. He goes higher than that at least 60% of the time. And that's what we're kind of looking for in these picks. You want about 60% hit rate. Another one I like is Odunze, higher than 46.5 receiving yards. He's out there every play, and that's what we like, right? It gets a little dicey sometimes when we take players who are slot only or, aren't out there when they're like going towards a run heavy scheme in the end because they're winning, right? Because game script can then come in there and just flip things out of our favor, right? But Odunze is going to be out there in the game script. He's going to be out there basically every play. And while Detroit doesn't have a bad defense, they're definitely worse than the Vikings. This is also Ben Johnson's homecoming. I can promise you he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. In this one, Odunze, Caleb Williams, they had an elite connection in camp. It didn't play out great in week 1. But again, I think Caleb is going to look better and better each week. This is definitely an easier matchup. This is another spot where I think you can stack it all up. If you really think Ben Johnson goes in there and just tries to light the world on fire, you can take higher than Odunze. You can take higher than Caleb Williams. I think that was 220.5 passing yards. So those two are my favorite, and they correlate together beautifully because Odunze is someone that'll hit deep downfield, and obviously that translates really well. If he hits for a 40-yard play, that's going to make it a lot more likely that Williams is hitting higher on his. But I also don't mind going to the Detroit side. I like Gibbs higher than 25.5 receiving yards. His receptions last week were more game script related. We talked about this in the start-sit video, how by halftime, when this game was closer and not out of reach for Detroit, it was basically a 50-50 split for Gibbs and for Monty. So don't look at the end stat line and be like, oh, it's a guarantee that Gibbs has a ton of receptions. But as we said, the Packers have phenomenal defense, and so they just couldn't get things going. So even though you had that game script kind of adding to the receptions for Gibbs, you would still prefer that they play better, that they move the ball downfield more, and that just creates more opportunities in the first half game when it's close for Gibbs. So it kind of works both ways. Again, top 3 defense. That's sort of my game plan this week. Like, we know the Vikings, the Packers, and the Broncos are the 3 best defenses, at least right now, in my opinion, in the league. And we're going to be fading players against them all season. We also know that people overreact to week 1. So with Titans, Bears, and Lions playing those defenses in week 1, I want to be higher on them than the public because I know people would overreact to the down game, but it's really just because those defenses are so good. So give me higher on Bears players, on Lions players again this week. And honestly, while we're at it, give me higher than 32.5 receiving yards from Elic Ayomanor. Elic, in his first game at Denver, plays 79% of the snaps, commands 7 targets, 5th among all players with 133 air yards. Also, as a quick detour, Malik Neighbors was second on the week with 70% of the Giants' air yards last week. That is absolutely insane, but not as insane as number 1 JSN 90.4% of the Seahawks air yards. That is crazy. Obviously, those two numbers will not stick, but that is mind-blowing. 90% of the air yards. Like, remember his rookie season for JSN when every single target was like 2 yards downfield, and you're like, this kid isn't even allowed to run a route more than a couple yards downfield, has no air yards. So all of a sudden now, 90% of the Seahawks air yards. That is crazy. But back to Elic. He's on the field all the time. He's commanding targets against Denver as a rookie. Those targets are coming deep downfield. I think his ADOT was like 19 yards downfield. So you'll look at the stat line and be like, oh, inefficient. I think it was only like 7. I think it was 2 for 13. So that'd be like 7.5 or 6.5 yards per reception. Don't worry about that. It was at Denver in his first start and Cam Ward's first start. Now, unfortunately, it's another bad matchup. It's a brutal one at the Rams, but at least it's in a dome. At least it's the second game for both these guys. And even though the Rams do have a great defense, they are not the Broncos. So that is my general message this week. People love to overreact in week 1. So when you also get teams playing against the top 3 defense that we know are going to limit production for all teams all year, I think people are going to overreact to how bad the Titans, Bears, and Lions offenses looked in week 1 just because they were in the worst matchups for week 1. And you can kind of see it in the Thursday night game. Washington didn't look good. And if that had happened in week 1, people would be absolutely panicking like, oh my goodness, the Commanders' offense was a fluke last year. They can't get going. No, the Packers are just one of the best defenses in the NFL. We're going to be fading teams against them and players against them all season long. And it's a similar thing with the Patriots and Dolphins game. Not that they played really tough defenses in week 1, but they looked so bad that no one's going to want to attack them. But their defenses were so bad that I think we can still attack this spot. I think it's a spot that can still produce a lot of plays. All right. That'll do it for this one. Good luck to everyone this weekend. I will definitely keep updating the projections later today, on Saturday, on Sunday morning for the latest news and injury reports. So if you want to take other picks, you can check that out on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com's detailed projections for every player over there. And if you have not signed up yet for Underdog, I have fantastic news for you. New users can play just $5 this weekend and get $50 in bonus funds. All you have to do is sign up with the promo code FFA and then again, play at least $5. You get those bonus funds of $50. I mean, that's going to let you tail our big play every single week, all season long in purely bonus funds, right? So I think that's a great opportunity to do. I would definitely take advantage of that promo while it's going on. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a like if you are still here. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new, but I'll catch you all on Monday to go over my favorite waiver wire pickups for week 3.